Hi everyone. Hey, good to see you. So as I mentioned in an earlier post, I was going to share tonight about just reflections and feelings and just my perspective during this time, and I want to invite any other perspectives into the space that come in a respectful manner. I really deeply appreciate right now civil discourse. That isn't, I want to acknowledge that what we're facing in this time is a high degree of censorship. And in some cases, censorship is actually very necessary. It is terrible when people create incite violent behavior in others. And that's one of the reasons that I do understand why action was taken with Parler. So if you don't know, 2 days ago, I think it was like 2 days ago now, a social media application like Facebook, except designed without censorship, was taken down. It was effectively dismantled. And this happened because the underlying infrastructure, Google, Cloud, and AWS, and these other services pulled the plug on them and said, you're in violation of our policies. And what their policies were is that they did, when it came down to it, from what I've read, require that Parler institute just a blanket level of surveillance on all conversations within the platform and all posts within the platform. And I understand, in one sense, why this happened. What happened at the Capitol and the violent plotting, like, we cannot allow that. Like, no demonstration in this world that is violent should ever, it's not going to achieve this beautiful rebirth, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. You might have a different one. That violent behavior is just something we need to keep in check in our world. Because it just creates more trauma and the cycle gets worse and worse. So taking down posts that are violent or incite violence, I absolutely respect, and I hope everyone else does. Jathan, just seeing your comment that it wasn't taken down, they lost use of the underlying services. So this is what's important. Basically, just to give you a basic level of understanding, right, of how a lot of internet services work. Most of the world now builds their hosting, like the place where, all of the web experiences, parts and communications and videos, like when we're sending videos on these applications, they're being stored in giant cloud servers. And the computing's happening with a third party. So Parler, or do any of you use MeWe? It's another censorship-free platform. There's also Nectar. There's a number of awesome platforms that have emerged to really get behind free speech. But these are often built on top of the infrastructure of cloud data services like Google Cloud, like Amazon's web services, and Microsoft Azure, to name a few. And so what happened is that what shut down Parler was that these services said, hey, you violated our policies. Unless you can install an algorithm that surveillances all user data over just 24/7, 365, and this is what it will need to look like, we're going to pull the plug on your services. Parler, having been this idea of a free speech platform, they didn't like the violent commentary happening either, but they weren't willing to install automatic surveillance algorithms across all the content. So this battle resulted in them saying, these service providers, the infrastructure that helps this all run, does all the video, is the place where all those videos, messages, and content was stored. They pulled back. So now there's no way for this platform to really exist unless there were another infrastructure, like something comparable to Amazon Web Services that could do the job. What the CEO is saying is, no, there isn't. And they're trying, actually, from what I've read, to take responsibility to institute spot checks for violent, have flagging within the platform for violent communication. I think to be honest with you, Facebook needs to be on top of this better. I get so much violent communication. I see so much violence here. I see so much violence on YouTube. I see when I posted during the Capitol Hill protests, people would say like, kill these like really intense things. I'd see it, and YouTube would not. That was with like, you know, content removal turned on that I'd received these. So I have to see that, like, what's strange is that Google is asking this of Parler, but I'm seeing their own platform faltering on this regard really bad. I'm seeing that, you know, this is a complex space, and I want to just like appreciate that. Censorship is very complex because it is a basic right that the founding fathers really designed for this country. And on the other hand, if someone is creating violence and is creating racism and is creating, you know, just detrimental, really evil, dark things for society, then that's something that I do think should be taken down. So, in any case, what I do think is going to be important here is, look, in the case of Parler, a lot of good discussion was happening on Parler. I was on Parler. I'm on MeWe. I'm starting to use these other platforms. And anyone out there, are you using other platforms besides Facebook? I'm curious. Or like Facebook, Instagram, right? Because I don't know if you've seen like the way that these privacy policies have evolved and surveillance policies, but we use these platforms because they're kind of a monopoly, right? Like everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on Instagram. There's the switching cost feels high to people because they haven't done it. A lot of people haven't, but millions of people have made the switch to things like MeWe, where really awesome conversation is happening. It's not hateful. The conversations I had on Parler were not hate speech, but I do think that exists there, just like it does exist on Facebook, just like it does exist on YouTube and all these places. So I think what the way that this feels to me is that a precedent was set 2 days ago, that Google, Amazon, these large cloud infrastructure players are able to basically shut an entire social media platform down because of one instance of violence on the platform. And I don't think they're, first of all, taking accountability for their own platforms that have lots of violent content, to be honest with you. And then I also feel that to do this all or nothing ultimatum where you must institute mass surveillance, that feels like an agenda that is being strong-armed as an all or nothing deal. So I'm looking at Jathan, but Parler, he says, was specifically used to plan the attack on the Capitol with impunity. Right, that's what we're learning. And I think Facebook has, you know, like text messages could be used to plan an attack. Email could be used to plan an attack. So does that mean that we should shut down an entire email service or shut down an entire platform because it was used as an accessory to something really terrible? What do you think? Do you think that if a terrorist attack or something like what we saw at the Capitol was planned over Yahoo Mail, that Yahoo should be shut down, all accounts suspended? Do you think that, or should we find a solution? Like, I don't think that forcing, because the tragedy of this, what happened, of course that plucks on our heartstrings. Of course my sentiment is like afraid of, you know, a really deadly thing being orchestrated on at all. But I think it's a false equation to say that, you know, to shut down an entire platform that's built around free speech. I think that it just happened so hastily. And I think that right now we're in a really complex ethical space in tech. And I know I'm not alone in this feeling. You know, from all my contacts in the tech industry, from, you know, 15 years working between Amazon, in telecom. You know, I actually worked and built an entire platform that was an AWS alternative in Canada. So I've looked into the nuts and bolts of this, and there's a lot of players that, a lot of companies and also just governments, what have you, that don't want their data stored on just one monolith, that if they change their mind and they change their policies, they're completely, you know, they could be upended like we just saw. So I'm just wondering what else in the sort of, what it is like a platform being able to use, like what is the true agenda behind these sort of massive platform removals. Right now, I would agree something needed to be done about Parler. I think this response was heavy-handed. That's my personal opinion. I'm curious what your opinion is, because I'm super open here, and I've learned through the last few shares I've done, I'm trying to pull back, Soul Fam. Like, I'm trying to modulate this rush to address these things in the world that my heart feels really impacted by, and I'm just concerned. It feels like a fatherly energy. It feels like, hey, like a brotherly energy. All my brothers and sisters that live in the United States, like all people. I love people. If you know me, you know I'll meet someone at a bus stop and just love them. Like I do love people. I want a world that's like, that feels respectful, and we have dialogue, and it's not this like frozen box where we can't talk about certain things, and we're led to be in fear about even, let's say, talking about holistic medicine, let's say, or alternative medicine. And hypothetically, I'm not seeing this right now, but, well, actually I am seeing this right now. Could a platform like Facebook, could a platform like Google, or, you know, decide they're not immune to lobbying. If they have an interest, they can decide what content does and doesn't appear on their platform, making no illusions about it. They have no ethical beholdenness to the user base to create a space that is agreeable to them. It is what is most profitable, what is most addictive, what is like, those are all drivers that drive the flywheel of profit in the surveillance capitalism industry, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry all told, with all the connected industries. So it's a huge force to be reckoned with right now. And of course it's possible for them to color the news that we're receiving and all these things to make it like, hey, don't you want a safer world? Like, we need to shut down free speech because it could be dangerous to you for someone to talk about like an alternative medicine when they should really be getting a vaccine. Like, but do they have ties in the health space? You have to look at that. Like, or you don't have to, but I do. I want to know that I can go somewhere that's a social media platform where I can express, and it's not, I'm not, I want to be in consent with the policies that are governing us. And someone named Drew wrote me a comment before this live, just with some really important points. Jay says they should really be getting a vaccine. You're so entitled to your opinion, and I think there's tons of people that resonate with you. So yeah, but if you don't feel that, that's okay too. You're a free human. We're all free humans, and if you don't hurt anybody and you don't plan to harm anybody, live in a space that you feel in integrity with. That's what I feel. I feel like I'm kind of scattering this discussion a little bit, and just want to bring it back in. And I guess what I see as a implore to just imagine is what would the perfect social media platform look like to you? What ethics would there be? What constitution would it have? That's my question to you. I'm really curious what others are really feeling about this. Are you happy with Facebook? Maybe you're totally happy with it. You have no issue with the way that it deals with censorship, deals with the sale of your data in order to give you a really good free service. I'm curious if others want something else, an alternative. And then furthermore, I think we just need to, when there's monopolies, I mean, there is a history of monopoly monopolies have been a problem in America before. So on the topic of monopoly, like if it is possible that when companies get too big, it can get into an unhealthy space where they control so many industries and have such a far reach that when someone wants to build something that's good for society, it gets squashed or doesn't have the soil to grow in. I'm to zone this into just the social media space for a second, because this is a much broader topic, as Drew mentioned. I don't want to, the whole subject of corporate monopoly could be a whole discussion of its own. But as it pertains right now to the monopolies in cloud computing infrastructure, I think it's a pretty crazy thing to look at when you see that Parler or MeWe or Nectar or these other platforms have nowhere to build on top of but these major cloud providers. All I'm saying, this is for tech nerds out there. A lot of you are like, what is he even talking about? But like, if you do follow what I'm saying, like, there is a need, I believe, triggered by this event for cloud infrastructure that does not come from those monolithic providers such as AWS, Google, Microsoft, because they're very heavily involved in politics right now. They have a very, like, that's my observation, okay? Like, take it or leave it. You might have a different perspective. They have certain interests. They're private interests. Don't expect them to do everything for the good of humanity. They're going to operate for private interests. That's how they're structured. They have shareholders. That's how it is. And, you know, of course, for PR purposes, they don't want to look bad. But I just think we need cloud data infrastructure, cloud computing infrastructure that has a different set of policies than I'm seeing with these particular providers. And I think you could take this logic and apply it to a number of industries. I think we need other social media platforms that are good at keeping hate speech out, but also good at protecting the right to real political discussion that is not harmful, that is beneficial, and to not have algorithms that we see in Facebook, like look at Cambridge Analytica, look at the way that current data diets are influenced based on, like, if anyone's that's seen, just go watch Social Dilemma to know what I'm talking about, and understand this. We need platforms that, by their very constitution, in my opinion, will never non-consensually use your data against, you know, in a way that is anything but what you desire. Now, that might mean you need to pay for their cloud storage. That may mean that because they can't go make boatloads of money off of, you know, manipulating you toward addiction, toward certain types of emotional up and down states and sentiment analysis through the types of posts that they show you and don't show you. Like, you better believe that's happening. You have been mapped. And your emotions are being toyed with, and it's profitable to toy with them because then you stay on the platform. So the policies of these big corporations, and they're different for everyone. I don't want to paint with a broad stroke right now. I know it could feel that way. I'm entering a very complex territory that maybe it feels daunting to even start to talk about all this. And I just want to say, for each of these large tech companies, I keep saying till I'm blue in the face, like, Facebook workers, Google workers, like, are you coming together on the inside and thinking about the ethics of the decisions you're making? Are you really taking into account that your services have such an impact on our world right now? Because guess what? We can't go to the town square and talk about political discussion. We can't. We're not even allowed to if there's more than 5 of us, right? So, yeah, you're technically a corporation, and you can set your own policies. You can suppress some content and boost others. You can do that. You can. Companies can do whatever they want. But if we don't have an alternative, if we want to have that political discussion and be nonviolent, then I don't think it's right. It's not good for society. It's not good for social good. The societies that have crumbled, go read history. The societies that have crumbled did not have forums, did not have a commons for the people to discuss these things openly. And that's my concern. My concern is that there's a slippery slope here that brings us closer to a place where we can't have open discussion. That's really the root of my heart beating in my chest when I read this. I don't have an attachment to Parler specifically, and I certainly don't approve of, now that I've learned more about what happened at the Capitol, that violent shit, like, fuck that. No, in no way do I feel in any way resonant with that. But political discussion, even when I'm triggered by it and I disagree, I would never have voted for Trump or Biden personally. I care much more about the local level of government and people that I feel actually 100% aligned to. And I respect whatever you feel, because it's a free country. At least it's purported to be. But I do think and feel that it's really important for us to not bury our heads in the sand right now. I said I was going to keep this super high. I try to keep this high vibe rather than like getting into a heavy energy about it. I really don't want to create heavy energy right now, because I know it's already like there's so much fear floating around in the world. I just think it's a perfect time to build beautiful new infrastructures, beautiful, gracefully designed platforms for discussion that really allow people to have fruitful, respectful, and insightful conversation. And for that to be able to happen and not mean that you also need to sign the dotted line, to have every aspect of it picked apart by algorithms that often manipulate people or extract data from them that they're not consented to. Like, do you know where Facebook has sold the things you've expressed and the sentiment that you had when you expressed them, and then some company that could manipulate that at a future, like, you don't know where it's gone. But if they were behaving in social good and we had this open discussion and we had 100 Facebook employees sitting right in this circle, I wonder what they feel. I wonder what's ethical. And I feel like humans are human. Like, humans have love. Humans want a better world. Humans get put in positions. I know it. I worked at Amazon for 6 years. And like, you get put in positions all the time where it's your job to do something, but it doesn't always feel right. Because at the end of the day, you'll hear from your bosses or a boardroom. I've really heard this. Derek, this is not a charity, bro. Like, sit down. Like, this is a for-profit thing, and if we're going to work with this, how are we going to extract value from this data or this infrastructure? We're going to. And you need to let go of that. And, you're doing the right thing. So, like, that's the real dilemma that people are in at these corporations. And I think just, like, holding a heart of support and holding a vision of, like, maybe we do create new ways of holding corporate accountability that incentivize social good, that incentivize free speech, that limit hate speech, that limit violence, but really hold a space for a whole discussion. I just wish I could see more. It would hurt to see certain things censored off of Facebook that weren't violent. Like, in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, friends put up stuff about reishi mushrooms and it was pulled down. Like, come on. Like, people are trying to help people. Like, how And and science has always operated on having many perspectives to develop. Go watch the Cosmos series. Look at societies that fell because they didn't allow that, and suffocated that. I just that's a real thing, and I don't want our civilization to crumble. I don't want America to go down in this, like, I don't want our future selves to look back at us right now and feel like we didn't face this and take. I don't want to tell my children in the future that I didn't speak to this at this moment, and that I didn't do everything I can as a tiny human that is like, what can I do? But what can we do together? I just wish we could come together and create, like, mastermind this one. We have so many brilliant people alive, way more brilliant than the people I see getting elected right now. I mean, I just, so that's that's where I've struggled with that. But, you know, I think this is a time where, you know, I have sometimes really, what I feel are really good visions, like brilliant visions, and other time they're ignorant. And I have people like my brother, people like y'all's that keep me in check, and I'm grateful for that. I don't want to pretend or be in the pretension that I know the answer to everything. It requires a very interdisciplinary approach to solve these deep issues like censorship, these issues like just the entire policy chain within the technology sector that impacts everything right now, because all of our communications are mediated by technology right now. And Jillian and anyone else feeling, yeah, this isn't a classical censorship. There are moves to remove platforms for dangerous radicals so they don't have a platform. Yes, I hear and plan their next attacks. The earlier part of this discussion, I just, like, text messages could be used to do that. A conversation in a park could be used to do that. Do we remove the park? Do we remove the cell phone? Do we remove, like, we need to handle those cases, but it's not a probable cause to surveillance the entire, like, algorithmically, every single communication on a platform or tear a platform down. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. And just to respond to Jathan here, because I wanted this to be a real discussion, and I want to actually interface here, because it feels vulnerable to do this right now. Like, I'm kind of just, I know I'm just, like, spouting the thoughts and feelings that have come up. They're imperfect. I might look back at this in a day or two and realize, like, oh man, I really, like, came forward too strong with this stuff before I really had thought through everything. And so, yeah, just holding space for the ways that I need to be put in check right now by you, and I'm open to that. So thank you for being here, and please just wanting to have a respectful discourse. That's what I wish for. Nonviolent communication, right? Violence is perpetuated on subtle levels and macro levels. So, okay, I'm going to read what Jay had to say. A lot of COVID vaccine conspiracy stuff trended very close to yelling fire in a crowded theater. Maybe they overreached, but I have no doubt that thousands of people died because of amplified misinformation. Okay, yeah, thanks, Jay. Thank you. This is a deep issue, and it's complex. It's very complex. So, one of the challenges right now regarding COVID, vaccines, conspiracies, is that, well, we live in a time of so much unknown. Even this vaccine it was rushed through under an emergency protocol, and it could be totally healthy and good. It's untested territory. And some people are saying it's outright dangerous before they have the data to support that. There is no data to support that. There's also, we can't pretend that there's data to support that. Oh no, there's no possible risk with an experimental medication, for instance. So when you talk about misinformation, there, in some cases, there just isn't the information, but people and organizations are masquerading as if they have the information. And this happens on both poles around every issue. You get bias, and you get, and that statistic. Like anyone that's taken a college statistics class, right? you learn about statistical bias and how that functions, how you can basically engineer, like a study it happens a lot. I think there was a study about peer-reviewed scientific studies, and I don't want to like quote it right now, but it was a very high percentage of peer-reviewed studies that actually later found it was revealed that they had a bias in the way that the experiment was actually designed. So that's why, yeah, when you talk about the word misinformation, it's a big buzzword. The word misinformation is all over the place. But what is information? What is misinformation? What is truth? What is non-truth? That's been at the heart of human experience for a long time. That's a deep question, really, at the end of the day. And some people will tell you, that this is the color yellow, and a colorblind person might say something different. Some people may say that it's true that, turkey tail heals this ailment, and the FDA might say, no, that we have no evidence to support that at all. Someone might say CBD is really healing for the endocannabinoid system. FDA and these will say actually that's a literally, this was like 3 years ago, they said it was literally had no possible medical benefit, and it was a scheduled substance. So it's very murky and blurry territory with all sorts of implications to declare anything true or false, unless it's like 5 + 2 = 7. Totally, that's true. That's not misinformation. That's really measurable. It's constrained within a system. You can say that's true. But you shouldn't be able to say that a certain like type of medicine, healing, anything like that, that doesn't, you should not be able to, you need a lot of efficacy, first of all, before you can even claim to say this is the evidence that supports that something's safe or not, or true or false. I just think people used to think the world was flat. Actually, some still do. And later that was proved to be, a globe. So that's, if we rewound the clock back to then, people would be like censoring the round earthers from Facebook and saying, nope, false information. Do not even begin to explore that idea. It's freaking dangerous. Science has progressed, understanding has progressed due to discourse. That's what I'm saying, and we need spaces for discourse. We just do. That's my belief. And so just to finally answer, Jay, your question for yelling fire in a theater, the true theater that we're in here remains to be seen. And you're right, from the current window of space and time that we have, we can look at right now is the safest thing to do is decidedly lock everything down. The safest thing to do was decidedly, get everyone to their homes, right? Don't stop the transmission, right? That was the safe thing to do from current temporal space. That's what we see right now. We also see that take the vaccine. It's the best possible thing you can do right now from the 9 months of efficacy studies that we have. Totally, it's the thing to do. How many times in history have we looked back 10 years at situations where everyone was told this was the thing to do, and it was actually a big risk, and a bunch of unforeseen things happened that later, in hindsight, everyone was like, why didn't people question this at the time? Well, so the crowded theater with the fire in it, is the fire right now, or is the fire, in exchange for the safety of the lockdowns, all these things, how many children have gone through abuse in their homes? Does anyone know that number? How many, just being trapped with really unhealthy parents and not being able to leave? Like, how many, how many people have just lost their businesses, potentially in really difficult situations? How many other countries are in starvation because their entire infrastructure collapsed? Are we thinking about the collateral damage of all these things? I'm not speaking for or against or saying one is true or false, but I'm just saying that it's a complex space, and to just call it, like, to constrain the frame of how you're viewing this, I feel it, and then heavy-handedly censor everything that isn't in that frame is called agenda setting when in communications, right? You study communications in college. You learn about media and corporate agenda setting. And so I just think that needs to be taken into account. I love you too, Jay. Thank you for that. Like, I love that we can have a discussion like this where I love this respectful picking apart of what this discussion is and challenging this, because often I like leap, and then I'm speaking on the behalf of the one perspective that feels like the most resonant, but I feel like 10 splinter conversations inside me, and I don't know how to speak to all of them at once in true balance. Okay, I feel like there was a former sentence that I didn't finish. Sometimes I do that. I just I bounce too quickly, so apologies if I've been hard to follow. Okay, I'm going to read some of your comments here. Okay, so Jay says, well, I think if we didn't fall back on the scientific method, we're pretty lost. No, they didn't. Jay also says, we've known the earth was round since at least the ancient Greeks, my friend. Thank you for the love. I'm feeling you. Is that Kara? Hey. There was never any real argument about it until the internet came around. That's really funny. Yeah. The internet is a debating ground. It is the commons. What a fantastic thing that we have. Like, that's why the internet single-handedly, in my opinion, raised the intelligence and emotional quotient of the entire world. If you think about how much information we've all had the luxury of accessing, children out there that are curious can learn anything. It's amazing. I won't even know what I would have done if I was 13 in this era. I could learn to program off YouTube. I could do, I could build, it's just so accessible. So the internet is amazing in that regard. And the free internet is so cool. Violence is not cool. It's not. We need less of it. But freedom of information, 100%. And alternative viewpoints, they might trigger you, but if anyone that's doing self-healing work, when you get triggered, you actually learn some of the most if you can handle it maturely and actually see where, the complexity of what someone else is sharing from their perspective. Sometimes it's awesome to go to a protest that's that you feel opposed to, and actually talk to people and learn a lot about what you didn't know, and also what you were what isn't in resonance with you. Doesn't mean jump on the bandwagon. Doesn't mean just compromise your compass. Here's the thing with censorship, to bring it into something that I keep feeling is what feels more respectful to my soul and to my intellect is not to censor something that again, violent stuff, you can take that away. Violent insight, if it's talking about killing people, no, I don't want to see it. I don't want to, that going around, that is dangerous. But if it's not of a violent nature, if it's just of a totally alternative viewpoint, I don't think that's dangerous. I think what would be respectful to my intelligence is that you say, hey, an artificial intelligence algorithm that's in alignment with me could have a suggestion engine that would say, hey, this is different than your biases. By the way, here's your biases based on everything you've written and spoken. This is something I would do. I'm not saying everyone would want to know this type of thing, but I would like to know, or I'd like a sentiment analysis algorithm to analyze every news source, everything, and especially mainstream news information, and just identify inherent biases, where their funding backdrop is, and possibilities of if it's leaning one way or another. It's pretty quick and easy with some articles to see they're very biased in one direction. I wish I could just know this particular article leans this way. Cool. Okay, at least I know that going into it. It's not just a like right or left thing. It's many variables. Like something could lean toward alternative medicine or Western medicine. Something could lean toward, like, oh God, I think y'all could come up with a bazillion examples, right? There's many different realms of potential bias because the world isn't the same to all people. That's just true. That's not misinformation, in my opinion. There we go. It's subjective again. But yeah, I feel that it'd be really less insulting to me to say like, you can't see this because it might be dangerous for you to see it because we think it's not true or it's biased or whatever. You could say instead, this is not, you could turn on something that would tell you this has this type of bias or this assumes that alternative medicine is not a hoax. And I'd be like, no, alternative medicine is totally a hoax. Or like, global warming is totally not a hoax. Like, I don't want to read something that challenges that, or I do, but I want to know what the inherent biases are and then make the decision for myself. Do I want to read this or not? Do I want to consume this media in my media diet? Like, that feels to me much more supportive. And I also want to say that yes, in some cases, it is dangerous there's varying degrees of what I would call misinformation, right? Like if a news media source were to say that, like if MSN was like, aliens have landed, blah, 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 or, some event happened that didn't actually happen, like it was a just blatant didn't happen, that is misinformation. Calling some sort of like, saying that I experienced this firsthand. I went to, so I was at the Capitol Hill protests for months. One day, Fox News published a picture of burning cars that we're all like, there's like an organic farm space. There's no burning cars at least at that point. And there never was burning cars, but there were challenging things that happened at the Capitol Hill protests eventually. But early on, there was this moment when they published these pictures of burning vehicles. And they took the picture from some riot in like Minnesota and published it as if it was Seattle. Like, whoa, that's misinformation. That's misinformation. That is untrue. And so this is complicated. Like and I think there's an answer, but I don't have it individually, and no one person may. But I think if we could, this is like, again, why we need to have symposiums. This is, again, why I just call upon all of us. And I'm bad at organizing. I wish I was better. To like bring together some sort of a cohesive group of people to like think through from many disciplines and perspectives. It cannot be myopic. It cannot be an echo chamber. It has to be really varied. But to think through these massive issues such as censorship, surveillance, capitalism, how health in this new era, connection between government and corporate entities, military-industrial intersections, and global crisis, and the intersectionality of all this, and not just fear it, whine about it, but what if we map from point A to point B? What could point B look like? Let's imagine an awesome social media site. Maybe it's literally governed and owned by its users, like every user has a share. And like, imagine if all of you, just by being a user on Facebook, you got a share in Facebook. Wouldn't that be cool? And you could actually vote for the policies. Again, to take a step back, my brother corrected me on this type of, I tend to like get really into like democratic platforms, but then he had a point. He's like, but then you can have mob rule and you can get a really unethical, so it's complicated. So that we need to I need more people like my brother out there to like think through this with and not be imbalanced in it. I'm saying like I'm not wanting to oversimplify this, but okay, my original point was like, we're at point A, here's point B. Let's imagine point B. What is a truly ethical cloud infrastructure look like that is like facilitating? It's not just going to boot people off, companies off that are doing, trying to do social good and work with them. How do we get like ethical social media and a version of YouTube that doesn't have the hardcore censorship but also doesn't get toxic? Tough question, but I think we can do better. Better user experiences, better interfaces, and geared towards social good. What does it look like if when I'm going to the store to buy groceries, I can like vote with my dollar to say, oh, this gallon of almond milk has this carbon footprint and this toxic, like paid its workers in low wages in some other country versus this one that was made right here. What if I can like have more access to that data as a consumer? And what if there's a blockchain system to track the actual downstream social and downstream environmental impacts of everything? Like, these are the types of things I think about, and there's probably huge holes in my thinking. I look at a time where we're so empowered with technology. We're so empowered to build solutions, and I don't want to like be in a complaint or like a low vibration about this, but I just think we can do more. And I think that if we could come together and have discussions from many different angles and skill sets, and map A to B, and then what if we even had a collaborative platform to look at where this all goes, and crowdsource ideas like Reddit and upvote and downvote, like different solutionary paths to get to point B. And maybe point B, look, there's 70 versions of point B held by different people in this country. It's complex. It's a feeling right now. It's a strong feeling, and I don't know if you're feeling it too. But if you build like online events and symposiums, I'd certainly like sign me up. I want to join. I want to offer everything I have in this era of time for social positive change, and I want to be humbled. I want to be challenged, but respectfully. I would love to have civil conversations. I'm really like missing that. I've been using this platform, but to be honest with you, Soul Fam, I'm kind of getting exhausted because I get a lot. There's been some really supportive energy and lately, but then there's also, I get sometimes under the radar, I get these really like hateful messages, and they're not like, it's not just like a respectful disagreement. It's like very violent language. So I feel sometimes reluctance to just come out like this. And also, I do not mind. In fact, I invite alternative perspectives to my own. I love that in a place of respect. So thank you, Jay, for instance, for bringing that up in a respectful way. Jillian, I felt that from you. And okay, I'm going to read this. So Kirsten says, I hope you consider that. Love the people and their lives. Can you imagine if it was your own parents that were lost to this? Yes. Yeah, if your own parents had been lost in one of these tragedies. And I would be so impacted by that. And I feel kindred with souls, so I do feel really just sad for what happened. And the heart is a powerful thing. And I'm not going to directly comment on the what happened in the Capitol, but just as a general thing, just to be aware of, our hearts are very sensitive, and when something really terrible happens to a person, it can be the catalyst for the entire nation to institute a new policy. And that sometimes that's the right thing, but it's also important to be really diligent about looking at all the piggybacking agreements that come on top of that. Like, for instance, after 9/11, we signed up unknowingly for our safety to be scanned at every airport, for biometric surveillance to become the norm. and there hasn't been another, like, I don't know how many attempted attacks there have been and how many people have died over the last, decades since the, September 11th. But we've also, there was a collateral cost to the entire shift in our lives ongoingly. So you have to look, I feel that it's important and like to look at this time that we're in right now as another 9/11 sort of a situation that, could have really far-reaching impacts, and just to be mindful of it and design them so that they really surgically really face the core issues rather than create these blanket new controls upon the American people. And also, if that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for the love. I felt that. Okay, so here we go. Jathan says, but I guess the question is, how many experts in how many countries have to agree about something before you feel confident in it? Okay. We're talking about health authorities around the world. The Mayo Clinic, Oxford, John Hopkins, verse that English guy that said COVID was over in October with a wink. I love you, Jay. That guy, if you were to expand on that, because I noticed you dropping credentials pretty heavy there with the Mayo Clinic in Oxford. That English guy, for those who are reading that comment, was the head of Pfizer's research and development division, about 200 scientists working under him, that developed the respiratory illness vaccines and other sorts of, look him up, Michael Yaedon, M-I-C-H, I think E-A-E-L, Y-A-E-D-O-N. So that's that English guy. So this is someone that, he was the VP there actually for years. So, and now he's doing another biomedical startup. So that guy, I thought was worth listening to, yes. I thought that in scientific discourse, again, go watch the Cosmos series and see how many scientists have been marginalized at the edges when they're just trying to protect humanity from something and speak out because they have a specific view and understanding of that space. I don't think that was just a guy. That was someone who's committed their entire life to the study of virology and worked at the company distributing the vaccine, aside from Moderna. So, yeah, you be the judge of what, there's just different information. I think civil discourse is warranted. That's my feeling. Okay, Munai, love you, brother. Thank you for speaking. Oh, love you too, Munai. Thank you for being here. And I miss you, Kirsten. Oh, I'm confused. Yeah, maybe I'm confused about what this is about. And for others that are feeling confused, I understand. This is I've bounced into a number of topic areas, and I want to get better at expressing this. And something I'm really looking forward to is that my brother Josh is coming home, and I'm so excited. My God, he's my best friend in the universe, and I love him, and I miss him. Yeah, we haven't seen each other in a year, and he's been in Denmark, and we're gonna have discussions and share them, and he balances me out a lot. I know and my dad as well, who's like, it's like me and my dad are almost on these two ends of the spectrum, because my dad works with a lot of politicians. He works with, all of the major government infrastructure pieces at a deep level. So very a lot of trust in that system, and different generation. And I think it's important to have that balanced dialogue. My brother's right in between the two of us. I tend to be more toward the poking at the I guess I have a little bit of a rebel heart, maybe. I have to look at that. I don't mean it in a way that's I don't want to be toxic with it, but I just want to ask questions and draw on the knowledge and experiences I've had in my life. And I imagine you do too, or you wouldn't be here watching this right now. And it's through discussions like this that we start to learn more, and we start to see the bigger picture and start to actually find hopeful and innovative directions we can go from here. So, yeah, really more platforms to support dialogue and solutionary discovery, discussion, thinking, plans, and then make them like fractured plans so that no one, we need it. Like, I want to see like 100 versions of the 2021 New Deal. What are we going to do? What's the New Deal? What's the Great Reset? I know by the way, great book, The Great Reset, by the World Economic Forum chairman, what's his name? Klaus. I can't remember his last name. Klaus, but good old Klaus wrote an incredible, account of like, here's what we know now, like in terms of like World Economic Organization understanding of all the levers and interconnected issues, and it's brilliant. It's great. They actually really acknowledge the role, the critical tipping point of surveillance right now versus and privacy, and how that could shake out and cascade into other areas of social trust and government destabilizations there. It's like, it's really well written and it thoughtful. I drew a lot from it. And then there's also, so I highly recommend it. It's called COVID-19, The Great Reset, by Klaus. Every time I say Klaus, I almost say Klaus Tuber, because we used to play this game called Settlers made by Klaus Tuber. We were always like, man, what if we ever met Klaus Tuber? Because I was obsessed with Settlers. Anyway, blah. Okay. Yeah, I think it'd be incredible to draw upon the resource of all of you to have these tech ethics discussions, to have these, what is the new world, what could the Great Reset be? Where could we go with that? And then flourish out different ideas in this space. What do we got? And maybe you only feel like you can weigh in on one particular area. Let's say like the new version of like the healthcare system, because that's your thing, that's your jam. Great, let's get like 10 different possibilities with that. Let's look at the entire resource pool that we have to work with the US government, with all of our GDP and all these things. Like, what sort of policies might emerge in that? And then maybe we can just kind of like leapfrog to something that a lot of people agree to, or regionally a lot of people agree to different things. You know what I mean? You might have to break it off depending on different areas of the country. Anyway, I'm going too far into it. Thank you, Munai. Sentiment algorithms. Yes, sentiment analysis is... Kara, thank you for this. Yes, too many drivers. Roads, path, trees to climb. Content overload, yeah. And I hope I might be contributing to content overload, and I want to respect your time. And so I've gone on for a long time on this subject, and it kind of went from the situation around Parler, Facebook, and just cloud data services in general, the policies that they're wielding, and launched into like the Great Reset and how planning could look, and co-facilitated space for us to have a think tank, to have a heart tank, to have a channel tank, like get into that space, bring the experts together. Okay, Kara says, whenever ready. Rad. Okay, Kara. Darrow, I'm really grateful for you talking about this. Awesome points, my dude. Yo, I miss you, Darrow. Bless your discernment too. Yeah. Okay, cool. Danny Stevens, I think it's easier to accept the censorship because the more progressive side that most of us associate with isn't, this is a long one, isn't being censored. Okay, so the progressive side is not being censored, the other side is being more censored. Okay, you're dividing it based on what you conceive of as progressive and non-progressive. I think the divides are much more, there's probably more spectrums to consider those. It would be interesting to actually, okay, you bring up a good Danny Stevens. Okay, he's saying he thinks the censorship is being more heavily weighted on one political spectrum. Here's an idea. Artificial intelligence, digital activists out there, yo. If you were to build a scraper that literally takes all of the stories being published, just watch for the ones that are being censored, scrape all those, gather the content, analyze the leaning of it, the agenda of it, like whatever information it was. Why don't we do a study on what's being most censored and just publish that data? That'll answer that question. It's like an easy AI win for some master's student. Like, go, get a team, like, do a breakdown on censorship. Let's get it, like, build a proper algorithm to continually measure that. And just have a dial, like, what's being more censored than others. And that gives us... That's probably easier than actually analyzing everything not being censored and detecting its bias. A first step would be to detect the bias and analyze it within what is censored and then work from there. Okay, I urge people to consider the possibility that a power shift could happen and then you would be on the short end of it. Okay, true. That's a possibility. You're right. We need to consider that possibility. Some people would disagree with you, but some people would agree with you. We need to like consider that possibility. That's the dangers of censorship, of anything that's not inciting violence, right? So he's saying the danger of censorship, we're saying violence should be censored, like violent stuff, okay. But let's take that out of the picture. Now that we're talking about the non-violent stuff, there's something, there's danger to censoring that stuff, the political discourse. Even though, so violence is left on Twitter as long as it's from the, yeah. Again, I had this early on in this discussion is that I, in March, received, I would say, between 50 and 60 violent comments that are probably still on the videos that I published, and YouTube did not remove them. That was with their inappropriate content or post checkbox clicked. This stuff is like, you know, just like racist, hateful, like, whoa, how is this? I couldn't police, like I was filming too much. I couldn't even maintain the inflow of these incredibly violent comments. So YouTube, come on, like Google pulling some other service off of your cloud when you can't even get your shit together on YouTube feels pretty double standard. I would agree with you about Twitter too. Even though, so violence is left on Twitter as long as it is from the left. Okay, I don't know the answer to that. It would require analysis to know whether it's more left or right. You literally just need to build what's called a scraper to like pull, you know, you have to scrape the internet, or which is just a programmer term for like grabbing the information from public pages so that it can then be digested by an algorithm that analyzes it and decides, you know, if that content had a certain sentiment toward a certain subject matter, keywords, etc. And then you can discern, oh, most of the censored content is this type, and you know, there's a very small amount of censored content that leans this way. Just noticing that I'm getting into my head voice. Back to my heart. Yeah, soul fam, sometimes I really get like going in this like heated energy. It's something I've been learning to dial back and breathe. Thank you for these questions. Thank you for these comments. They're really insightful. Thank you for this. This is what I was hoping for tonight, was just respectful dialogue, and to be challenged like this in this way is really feels so good to me. This is what the commons that I wish we had, and I saw more of on Facebook. Including, and I'm just going to finish reading Danny's comment about his feelings about bias and what's being censored or not censored. He's saying it's being censored, including COVID stuff from trained doctors, virologists, and epidemiologists who questions our handling of COVID. Yes, that's my anecdotal perspective. Again, I think we should spur the idea out there for someone to go gather this data in a way that's like, you know, properly reviewed and like provides the raw data. But I think you're right. My anecdotal you know, observation has been, I saw a lot of like any doctor that's proposing that maybe we need to question this approach is being like almost violently censored, just like without much, rather than, oh, this doc, like what would be respectful to your intelligence, right, is to say, this doctor, you know, I would like to opt into the Facebook program that gives me the story before the story and tells me what they think about the story, but not to claim that as fact. That's based on their whatever, you know, Okay. I'm rushing to solutions, and I really just need to speak to the core feeling of the problem. Is just, I think censorship is something, you're right, that we need to really, in order to keep good scientific discourse, so that we actually heal humanity right now and look at all the factors and don't just knee-jerk silence it if it's anything other than a single narrative. Because look, that's a single point of failure. Like, that's, as a societal structure, if we build our entire decision-making process on one entity, such as the WHO or the CDC or what, like, it needs to be multifaceted. I'm not saying they don't have really valuable things to contribute, because they do. Same thing. I know that's going to trigger people too to say that, but I think there's good people in organizations, aware people in different organizations that just know what they know and believe that what they know is the truth. So they will very vehemently say this is true, and two people can think this opposite is true in this world. And it's this crazy life experience that we get to live in which there's a lot of subjectivity to go around. And pretending it's not there is, I think, probably one of the biggest falsehoods. So anyway, I would love to see transparently, because it's a global issue, like this is a full world issue, how Facebook is going about designing their algorithmic censorship of content. I'd like to see how Facebook is amping up or dialing down and suppressing certain content on its platform to certain users. I believe they should be transparent about that for the sake of the social good, but they're a company. Others will say, no, they don't have to do that. That's their data. Okay, fine. Can another social media platform, hi, I'm your future customer, like, emerge that's like really easy to use and the user experience is great, but doesn't just heavy-handedly censor, does not, if I'm going to opt into surveillance because it makes it cheaper to use their product, cool. But give me the option, and I want to know where my data flows to. Like, I want to know who you sold it to. I might say, cool, you can sell it to like cool product advertisers, but I'm not down with you selling it to big data aggregators. I wish there was a blockchain to trace the entire chain of where a human's data is bought and sold. That is our sovereign essence being analyzed and bought and sold. So I do believe that if we were an ethical country and really in the 21st century with all the tech that's available, if we want to be all traceable, let's trace the money as it relates to us as the product, where our conversations, our shares, our everything are the product. And I think it's our right to know what's done with that product. I don't know how you feel. That's a question mark. This kind of strayed, again, we're talking about social media ethics a little more broadly now. And maybe I should just like break this into another piece later. I just want to make sure I respond to all of y'all, because I'm so grateful to have a real discussion, back and forth with you all that are commenting. It's awesome. It feels good. Kara can't have bully groups. We ended that. Facebook groups are unhealthy. Okay, so bullying can happen on Facebook. Absolutely. Good holes are porous to breathe. Okay? Everybody take a deep breath. It's good. You're on a good path here. Thank you. Listening. I like this. I can see the system working. Sweet. Okay, Whitney. Let's see what Whitney says. Okay, so Whitney Souse. Thank you for having this conversation. You are doing an amazing job being vulnerable, courageous, and inspiring. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Whitney. It does take some courage to do this, because I know what I have to share right now is very imperfect in form, and I'm ignorant in a million areas. Thank you all for bearing with those and maybe being triggered by me here and there, but just hoping to create healthy dialogue and explore these things, so that eventually, like through all of us, we start having aha moments when we're in the shower and we're like, oh my God, that thing we were talking about, I just thought of a solutionary area over here, or just bringing up good conversation. Anyway, thank you, Whitney. Appreciate you. Yeah, I miss you. Come back to the community and hang sometime. Yeah. Love the complex. It's perfect. Yep, I like that, says Kara Leigh Peters. And Matt says, but you have to, Matt DeFau, sweet, we got Matt on here. But you have to understand the First Amendment applies to government censorship. These are private. The comments are so hard to read while you're in this, it like scrolls all weird. Jay said, but you have to understand that the First Amendment applies to government censorship. These are private companies. The First Amendment doesn't apply here. Bam, I'm so glad Jay said that. Matt says, Rachel, actually Section 2 of the Sherman Act sure does. Oh, that's why I posted the Sherman Act, actually, because when you have monopolies and they're deciding policy, and they're the only place to go for communication, then it starts to be a gray area, right? Of like, technically they're a private company, so they can write the rules. But if 5 companies like literally own the entire infrastructure of the United States communication between humans world, that starts to become a little fuzzy, right? Because if do they write the laws of our nation actually now? Like, what impact could they have? Very little or a lot? Ask that question. How much would YouTube changing its policies drastically, or Facebook, or all of them at once, impact us? Would we be like, oh, that's cool, I'll just hop over to the other competitor. There's another just as big Facebook that has all the features of Facebook that doesn't do this thing in their policy. If the answer's a little unclear, then that's what we've called a monopoly. I don't want to oversimplify it, but there's definitely, this whole discussion is predicated on like looking at the state of corporate monopolies in America, and I just think it's about time we look at it, because I mean, we have a few of these tech companies that are over $1 trillion in value, and that is actually the dollar value and market cap doesn't really tell you the whole story. The fact is, every piece of data that exists, and all our lives are traced. We all know this. There's a few movies out, The Great Hack, go watch that on Netflix. What's the other one? Social Dilemma, go watch that on Netflix, to understand like the degree to which our lives are transmitted, mediated, and our social interactions, our events, our plans are all flowing over like a few companies' platforms. So when they change a policy, it impacts our civilization. But they're private companies. They can do whatever they want. If they decide that they want to send, that in order to continue using Facebook, you have to do something you don't want to do. Like, I don't want to come up with some like dystopian example and birth that into being, but I'm just saying, like, when you have monopolies and they decide to change a policy and you don't have a good alternative, then it creates, what it's doing on a social level is it's not good for social good. The society is not actually benefiting from this massive corporation being that size, because it's squashing outside players. Like, look, just now, Parler was squashed, and I see why, okay? Like, we see why. We don't want that violence out there, but I'm just saying, pay attention. Are we going to see the squashing of things like MeWe that are also not censorship-free? And I don't see violence happening there. Like, and if there is, it's just in little pockets. That doesn't mean like annihilate an entire platform. I don't think. So back to this thing of like, there is a point where we need to look at the monopolistic forces of Google and Azure and AWS and even Facebook and Instagram. Like, we need, like, y'all, if you're watching this, or Facebook's algorithm, if you're analyzing my words right now and transcribing this, which I know you are, I want to say, like, I respect the platform you built, the usability of it, all these things, except there are things that because you're analyzing your users, that they're not stoked about, in the way that they're being forcefully brought into contract and made to consent to. Like, we've been pushed to the brink of things that, for some of us, others are like, no, Facebook's great. Some people are feeling like this all doesn't feel good as a consumer or as a person. So I guess that's going to eventually mean that I just kind of want to see these guys you know how MySpace just kind of, because they didn't pay attention to what was happening. Facebook, I think, is in that crosshairs. Like, if there's another, if another, and it'd be good for America, it would be good for the world. It honestly would. Like, it'd be a good story if a new social media network rose to power and built its structure so that when it became powerful, it would not just get bought out by Facebook and squashed, but like built from the ground up, owned, governed by its users, paying respect to its users. What's the constitution of it? Letting users opt in and out of how their data is used or bought and sold, like, or if they want to pay instead of being analyzed, like all these things. I'm just saying, okay, back to Jay's point, the companies can do whatever they want, right? True. I don't think it's ethical. I think if I was working at Facebook, I'd feel queasy about the type of things I was building, and also good about some of them, but it leaves a giant gap in the market for there. I think if you were to take an analysis of Facebook users, Instagram users, there is a pain point, as we call it, in the entrepreneurial world, right? Like, you don't build a business until you actually go out and find out, oh, this is a giant pain point for a lot of customers. How many people are feeling these pain points? Like, and if you had a comparable version of these social media networks, would we see a landslide movement to them? I'd be right on that ship, and I bless you, Facebook. I hope you wake up in time. I sincerely do, because I think there's really good people there, probably. They stay very like non-transparent. God, imagine another company that's totally transparent with their culture, with their decision-making process. We'd be like, yeah, that's the cool team. I'm going there. They're being ethical. They're like non-profit or social impact, super dialed. They cannot sell out later all this data to like another company and change their policies. It's like built in to not go corrupt and fail. Heck yeah, I'm jumping to that platform. I don't know about you, but I'd be all over it. And then it'd just be market forces driving the rise of something that is better for social good. That's what I can imagine. So Matt also says, JThil section 2 of the Sherman Act is about monopolies. There's a link on this. If you look down in the description, there's a link there about the Sherman Act, which is how monopolies are defined and governed in America. So it's worth understanding as a piece of history of what America's been through as a result of monopolies like Standard Oil and other things that have caused, they basically took over the market and then like forced consumers into tough places. Anyway, I've gone on for a long time. Thank you for those of you that are here and have felt compelled to be a part of this flow. I'm really grateful, just so grateful to you for this discussion. Whitney, same. Yeah, much love, Whitney. God, Kara, thank you for participating so much. And I'm just looking at Darrow. You're flipping amazing, brother. Dang, Yarrow, love you. Thank you for participating and just vibing, brother. It's good to see you, feel you. If any others have questions, I'd love to hear them, but I feel let's see, I feel pretty complete on what I wanted to share tonight. For those of you who are watching right now, just jump back to the beginning. There was a number of different kind of chapters to this. Sister, brother, example, America, Kara says, family, I love it. Stay you are perfect. Oh my, okay. I'm going to read through these afterward. I'm really grateful for the, thank you. I've been feeling really vulnerable to do this and just flow with y'all's, because I'm sure it's like when you do this live thing, it's like you can't take it back. It's just like coming out, and you can do the best you can, and later you might look back and be like, oh, I wish I said, I was so unbalanced there, or I got way too fiery about this thing when there was really all these other points to consider. And so when some of you comment and you're like, yo, check yourself on this, I'm like, yeah, me too. I agree. I should have, So this is very imperfect. Thank you for bearing with. Danny Stevens, hearts. Okay. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Love you all and have a blessed, blessed night. Acknowledging the gravity of the situation we're in. Really acknowledging that. It is a time to come together. And that's what I believe. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can come together and create solutions together for censorship, for all forms of tech ethics, for healthcare ethics, for media ethics and what it, you know, how we define what's true or false or needs more is really unknown, and or what it might have some bias but is partially true. There's lots here. I love you all. Mwah. Let's get a new social media platform going, I hope. And I'm still gonna use Facebook. It has like good uses, but I think something for like discourse that's not censored, non-violent. That's the vibe. Super transparent. Not gonna sell out. I'm on your team. All right. Blessings, everyone.